No worries.
Adult photo. It's kind of a fun challenge, but it'll make it less fun. Because they can go up to apparently people do some.
Oh, cool.
That's the website. Recording. Thank you.
Hey, did you have something else? Pocket dial.
You're alive.
We're live. Okay, we'll give it a couple more minutes. I think we probably got just about everybody we're going to have. So I want to thank y'all for coming. I appreciate it. And we started looking at Summit Utilities, opened our own investigation into gas prices and billing back in January. And we have since then had about 2,800 complaints. And of course, I individually, in addition to our staff, I have individually heard from people who grab me on the street, my neighbors, my friends, people at church. I often am on the Nextdoor neighbor app, and people have reached out to me through that. So I have personally have invested a lot of my time in addition to our staff's time on this issue. I have spoken with Summit Utilities staff, and I've spoken with mostly directly with Summit Utilities CEO. I have, in fact, I spoke with Summit Utilities CEO this morning and have stayed in touch with him throughout this process. So we've gathered a large, significant body of facts. And I felt like this is a good time as we move into the March billing, and we have not received complaints regarding March billing yet. And so I thought this was a good time to give you an update on where we are, what we found, what conclusions we've been able to draw, and to provide some insight as to some of the facts that have not been in my experience, have not been communicated enough with the public. So first of all, I want to walk you through a little bit. I want to walk you through some of the bills and talk about the role that I play versus the PSC. So my role is to be the public advocate for Arkansans, to be their voice before the PSC. And that's exactly what this investigation is leading to. And it's exactly what I've tried to be. And that's why I've been engaged with you, the press, so much. And the PSC has the statutory authority under Arkansas law, the statutory authority to regulate Summit, particularly as it relates to billing and gas prices. But I have an obligation not to sit around and wait for someone else to do their job. I have an obligation to investigate things that I think require investigating, and then request that the PSC take the information I've gathered and pursue it as a regulatory matter. So first of all, let me talk about, there have been a lot of different problems, potential problems, complaints that have been brought to our attention. But normally with a consumer complaint, we take that individual complaint and we work with that individual Arkansan to fix that problem. That's the way we normally do it. If someone has a bad experience with this company or that company, and it's an individual transaction, an individual problem not shared by many others, then we deal with that on a one-to-one basis. But when we have thousands of people impacted, which is what we have here, we approach it differently because we try to fix the root problem, because we have thousands of people impacted by the same exact issue. Now, there's no question that there are individual one-off, specific problems not shared by many others as it relates to Summit Utilities. But I want to quickly summarize the problems that we've identified that were shared by many, many Arkansans. And so I'm going to walk you through some of the bills. Let's go to, okay. So let me get over here. So this is, well, I know you don't want me to get away from your mics too much, so I'm going to do this. So this bill is a Summit utility bill that is on the old CenterPoint system. If you'll look, you'll see this is not a real colorful bill like the newer Summit bills. This is maybe you could say a little more boring in presentation, but it's the old CenterPoint model. And in fact, you'll see CenterPoint Energy here, even though the Summit brand is here. So when we first started our investigation, we identified some bills that were being paid in this old CenterPoint system, even though it's labeled Summit. And then when the transition occurred to the new Summit system, the payment did not show up. Okay, so if you'll look here, we have a $44.19 payment on this Summit bill, but it's on the old CenterPoint system. Next slide. Okay, here's the following bill for the same person. You can see the bill looks a lot different. That's because the transition was made from the old CenterPoint billing software system, even though it was labeled Summit there at the end, to the new Summit system. Well, if you'll look, you'll see that the previous was $44.19, and under payments and credits, it shows 0, even though this individual paid the prior month's bill. So what we found is a series of individuals, we didn't know how many, who had paid their bill under the old CenterPoint system, and when it transitioned to the new Summit system, their payment was nowhere to be found on the bills. And so we raised this at a hearing in the legislature. There was a Summit representative there. They were not aware of this problem. We discovered this problem here at our office, and they immediately started looking into the problem, looking at the software to see what had happened. Later that evening, I believe, my memory serves me, the CEO of Summit texted me that this, in fact, was a problem. They did not know about it until they heard about it at the legislative hearing, and they tracked it down, and there were, by their number, there were about 510 individuals who had this problem. And so that is one example. This appears to have been a relatively small pool of the hundreds of the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of individuals more broadly affected. Okay, so that one we identified, and we believe that one was dealt with in its entirety. Okay, so that's problem type number one. That is not the sort of problem that led to a lot of the public attention on Summit. Next slide. This, one more. This is a representative bill that led to the attention that Summit, all the attention that Summit got, which was sending out an estimated bill. This says estimate right here, $603. Now on this one, like all these bills, there are three key factors that really play an important role in the amount of the bill. There's how much the price of gas is on the bill, how much was used, how much gas was used, which is, on this one, it shows it as being, looks like 260 CCF. And then the third thing that we look at is how many days usage. Some bills, the prior month may have 28 or 29 days of included in the bill, and the next month may have 34 days. It can be a 5-day difference, which is about a week. So that can make a big impact on the bill. So the amount of the cost, the amount used, and the number of days covered in the bill. Those are all factors. Now on this bill, this person was really shocked because this was a property where they weren't using any gas to speak of. And so this estimate was based on prior use, and it showed this individual owed $603.43. Now let's look at the bill, the actual bill. Hit the slide. Okay, this bill, they had 260 CCF used, gas used on the other one. This says 20, only 20. because this is actual. Now, why is it still so high? Well, it's high here because there's a deposit of 150. But if you take away the 150, you're only talking about $90 compared to $600, right? So this was the actual versus the estimated. This is the sort of issue that many Arkansans, about 167,000 Arkansans had to deal with. Now, this is a stark example because this was a property that wasn't really being used. And so some people, when they got their actual, their bill went down. Many people, when they got their actual, their bill either went up or stayed about the same. So we saw all those different versions. But this is the second sort of problem. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't add, when did this happen? It didn't happen in June when furnaces aren't running. It happened in the wake of a cold snap in December, which exacerbated the problem. Because not only do you have these eras in billing, you have a very cold period in December. If I remember correctly, in Little Rock, we were even down in near the single digits, right? And then you have increase in gas use, particularly people who aren't using heat pumps, who are using furnaces. And so this is what I call era type number 2. This affected about 167,000 people to some degree or another. Okay, era type number 3. Next slide. Okay, so this is a bill for February. This is a bill for February, and it's $867.14. Now, if you get that bill and you see, first of all, many people were already frustrated, angry with the January bill that they thought was way too high for whatever reason, whether it was an estimate or what have you. And then some people get this bill. Well, how does that make them feel? If they're mad, they're even more so now. If they're frustrated, they're even more so now. And they're like, wait a minute. This is not getting better. This is getting worse. Well, my goal is to make sure, number one, that the voice of the people is represented. Number two, to make sure no one pays for gas that they didn't use. There's all kind of billing issues here, but ultimately, no one should pay for gas that they're not using, and they should only pay for what they're using. So I received some calls because so many people have my cell phone number. People call me and they go, hey, can I text you my bill? That happens. The other day, an attorney from Camden, who now lives in Little Rock, who had my cell phone, my wife's from Camden, he called me up. Actually, he texted me, and I called him up. And he goes, I got this bill. And I said, well, hang on a second. Text me a copy. So I looked at it. This wasn't his, but it was real close. And I said, Mr. Gentleman, what's this say down here where it says balance forward? He goes, oh, wow, that's last month's bill. Well, the problem was the balance forward represented last month's bill, plus the bill had this month's bill. So this was really a 2-month bill. Now, he wasn't out any money, but it scared him. So what happened here? More mistakes by Summit. What happened here is you had the estimated bills sent, and then the actual bills are sent, and you have all these bills going out. The question is, did the February bill go out before or after the payment, the auto pay, was credited? Well, in the gentleman that called me, and in this one as well, automatic payment, they were set up to pay automatically. But the automatic payment did not pull, as the banks say, it did not pull or had not pulled at the time the February bill went out. So, like in this case, you had the Summit bill go out for February and there was no credit for January. That doesn't mean it wasn't set to pay. It just means at the time this was mailed, it had not yet. So he wasn't out any money, but it was frustrating and angering nonetheless. Now, those are the three main types of errors that we've identified. Going through into February, as of this morning, we had not received, it looks better in terms of the complaints we're receiving with regard to the March bills, which is good news. It's early. We'll see, but it looks better on that front. So let me point out a couple of things. One thing in particular, so we've got billing and we've got price that I hear a lot about. I've gone through some of the billing issues, okay? Now, I want to say for the record, again, yes, some people will have problems that don't look like the three separate types that I described here. No question about it. But we have not seen other problems to be systemic. We've seen them more individualized. Okay. Now, with regard to price, if you will, let's see. Yeah. So it's on this bill, and it's hard for you to see, but I'm going to read this to you. So with regard to price, I see a lot of comments online about Summit's ability to just charge whatever they want and how they're just charging whatever they want and putting it to all of us. That's not possible. They can't charge whatever they want. The price that they charge is highly regulated by the PSC. And it's best to break it down into the base rate and to, for laymen like me, the price of gas. Okay? The base rate is set by the Public Service Commission here in Arkansas. Now, the price of gas generally that they're buying in the market, that is not set by the PSC, but it is monitored by the PSC, and it is known to the PSC. And so let me point out, so they started adding this on some of their bills, and it's important. At the top here on this bill, it says Summit does not make a profit off the gas supply rate. You pay what we pay, and the cost is a direct pass-through. That is true. So let's talk about that for a second. The base rate is where they make their money. The base rate is set by the PSC. What's the base rate? Well, don't think of Summit as a seller of gas. Think of Summit as like a trucking company, so to speak. They are paid for moving the gas. The gas prices do fluctuate, but the base rate is what they're paid for moving the gas. And that rate is directly related to and regulated by the PSC. Now, they are under an obligation to take steps that are consistent with Arkansas law and regulations when they're buying gas, and they have to be responsible in that regard. Or if they did not purchase gas and manage the purchase of gas properly, the PSC can seek a rebate for customers here in Arkansas. In fact, I want to point out something that I think is very important here. They're not the only gas company in Arkansas. In fact, there are several others, and I want to mention that we have not had similar complaints regarding other gas companies. And I think that's important to point out. That tells me that how the gas was purchased, when it was purchased, and all of that, at a minimum, that needs to be examined. So let me tell you, let me give you a couple of other gas companies that operate in Arkansas. Black Hills Energy Arkansas is one. That is, I say it's a gas company. They're moving gas just like Summit. We've had only 7 complaints about Black Hills Energy Arkansas. 7. Okay. Now, another company is Oklahoma Gas. They also operate some in Arkansas. And we have had 0. We have had 0 complaints about them. So, what that tells me at a minimum is how the gas was bought, when it was bought, and how that process was managed is an issue that needs to be examined. Now, when Summit says that the price of gas has gone up 35% over the last year, that's true. 35, 36% over the last 35% increase over the prior winter's rate. No question about it. And it is also true that over the last couple of years, it is doubled. And I want to point out, so it's Arkansas Oklahoma Gas Corporation. I misspoke. No complaints from them. So it has doubled over the last couple of years and gone up 35% over the last year. No question about it. But that's not the question. The question is, how do these other companies manage the purchase of gas versus Summit? That needs to be looked into. So that brings me to today. So today, I will be filing a motion with the Public Service Commission, and we have copies of this motion that we'll be distributing after the press conference here. And we are, in a nutshell, we are asking the Public Service Commission to take our findings with regard to billing and to take our findings with regard to the price of gas, the cost of gas to consumers through Summit, and we're asking them to look at both of these issues. Now, with regard to the issue of gas prices, we are asking them to do that in what we call an existing open docket. And that is the docket that goes back to Winter Storm Uri. That docket is still open, and I believe Uri was in February of 2021. And so that is an open docket where we can request that they look at the company's purchasing practices following Winter Storm Uri. Secondly, in addition to the purchasing practices which relate to what we're charged for gas, we're asking that they look into the potential violations of Section 5 of the Public Service Commission's General Service Rules as it relates to billing, in the billing practices. Now, this will be filed today out of this office. We'll get you these copies. I would be remiss and it would not be fair if I did not mention a couple of things that came out of my conversation this morning with Kurt Adams, the CEO of Summit. I've got his text right here. I spoke to him. I will say he's been very accessible. I've called him numerous times, probably more than he would like to hear from me. And he's called me some, and we've always had very civil conversations. And I've been very frank with him about the problems that we have here. And I've given him some advice on what I think should be done. He wanted me to know, and I'm going to pass it on to you. I told him to text me so I wouldn't have to write it down. He said that they have budgeted to hire 75 additional customer service reps, 30 of which have already been brought on. And they've made the decision to make even more investments to improve the customer-facing software. I believe that number is $10 million additional investment. He says that the wait times are down on the customer service side to 91 seconds. Now, I can tell you a few weeks ago, it was about, I believe it was more than an hour, maybe 2 hours. Then it was down to about 5 minutes. And we tested it one day when I got a call at my house. Somebody had my cell phone and said, "Hey, I don't want to call them. I'm going to call you. It's taking too long." And I said, "No problem. I'll help you." But I asked my staff, "Hey, can you call and see how long the wait is?" It was 2 minutes on that day. So that guy really wanted to talk to me about it. I went back to him and told him it was 2 minutes. Well, now it's down to about a minute and a half. So that's good news. But at this point, based on what we've collected, it's time to refer this to the authority under Arkansas law for taking this the next step in terms of making it a regulatory matter. And with that, I'll take any questions. And will someone help me get these out, Ron? Will you? I think we've got enough for all the members of the press here. And all of the exhibits that I went through here are reflected in that packet, or should be.
Can you comment on some of the potential violations that the PSC could end up finding or what they're looking for?
Well, as I mentioned with regard to, first of all, I'm not going to speculate on what they might find or might not find, but I will describe the power that they have. And for example, on the pricing, they do have the power to require rebates, for example. And that, my understanding is that has been done in the past, and that could be done potentially, in this case, refund or credit, something like that. I'm not saying that will happen here. I'm going to leave that to the PSC, but that is a possibility. That's a power they have.
What, have you talked to the PSC before today, or have you ever talked to them?
I have made it clear that I wanted my staff to handle all those interactions. I have not talked to any of the commissioners on purpose, but my staff speaks with the PSC staff routinely.
About this issue?
About how many times, Chuck, have you almost, I mean.
Yeah, it's about a half a dozen times.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so did that start in January or when the first?
Yes, I believe that we sort of, we started getting complaints right after I took office. I would say it would be about the 16th of January, something like that. 17th through the 24th is when the estimated bills went out. So I would say right after that. Is that fair, Chuck?
Yeah, it was during that time period.
Yeah. But yes, sir.
You're not saying that there's any unlawful practices here. We're just saying there's issues with the billing.
What we're saying is there are issues with the billing at the PSC because they have the authority for action under Arkansas law that they need to look into. And secondly, on the issue of gas prices, they need to look into that. Here's what I would say to Summit or to anybody. It's in everybody's interest for all the facts to come out on this. And if there's absolutely nothing there, everybody needs to know that. And so I think everybody has an interest in having this fully fleshed out by the Public Service Commission, who has responsibility based on the facts that I'm presenting to do this in this case.
So given the fact that the Public Service Commission has been aware of these same issues for 2.5 months at least, what's your opinion on their inaction to this point?
Well, first of all, I have a different role than the
I
PSC.
understand that.
I have a more public role, and they don't inform us of everything they're doing or not doing.
Right.
And I don't know how many people have called over there, but we have held ourselves out, and appropriately so, as the place for the complaints to come. And we've received those. I would say that we probably have had more interaction with people affected. I don't know the numbers, but I'm just making an educated guess that we've probably had more person-to-person interaction on this issue than anybody else other than Summit. And so I think that we are in the best place to summarize what we found and to present it to them. I will let them speak for themselves and why they choose to do what they do.
Do we have a potential timeline as far as when we can expect, and maybe this might be a PSC question, but you've got a lot of Arkansans who are struggling. They don't know how they're going to pay their bill. You've got this lawsuit now of a TRO that's currently in place. So people have stopped paying their bill. It's possible that 3 months from now, someone's going to get a $1,500 bill and actually owe it because they haven't been paying. Do we know a timeline to tell Arkansans?
I don't have a specific timeline. Here's what I can say. In many cases, not all cases, but in many cases, once the credits catch up with the bill, you're going to see an equalization there. You're going to see that reconcile. Now, people who are having trouble paying their bill because of the higher price of gas, there are some, in fact, Summit has an assistance program, and there's information on their assistance program on the website, on their website. And if people are having difficulty with that, they certainly should call our office. In fact, today I was on the neighborhood app, and I pretty much monitor what's going on there. And I got this. I won't give a name, but basically it's a lady who says she's getting high gas bills that she can barely afford. She says she's unemployed, single mother, no transportation, and she would like some help with the bill. Not there's a billing problem. This is to your question. This is I need assistance with the higher price of gas. Now, that's not what this complaint is about per se, but I immediately on the neighborhood app said, send me your phone number. And I gave it to a nursery who's here somewhere in the back about an hour ago. And I said, call her back and let me know. I said, please call this lady, report back. So we are trying to help with that. Now we can't make that, we can't wave a wand and make that bill go down. But here's what we can do. We can make sure that individual gets all the information they need and make sure that they get fair treatment and that they are responded to in the appropriate amount of time by Summit. That's what we can do. And the ladies at the back, 2 of the ladies standing at the back, have been a key part of the team that received over 2,800 complaints. That's not just phone calls. That's actually filling out complaints. And so they are well aware of all the nuances and can help on that. So we'll continue to do that.
One quick follow-up question, as far as going back to the when someone is purchasing their gas as it compares to other gas companies in the state, is it possible that some had bought it at the highest price point and others didn't, and now we're paying for it? Is it a business model or business decision that should have been looked at on someone's part, or what are we talking about here when we talk about purchasing history?
That's what we're asking. Well, we are two questions there. That is what we're talking about in terms of purchasing history. That is what we're asking the PSC to look at.
So can I ask you two questions?
Sure.
First, just to clarify, this says separate investigations. So in the natural gas cost and billing practices. So are you asking the PSC to do two different investigations?
We're-
one into each one of those?
Yes, if you'll look at paragraphs 31 and 32 under relief sought, the very end on the signature page.
Yeah.
One of these, we believe, the issue of purchasing practices falls under the existing docket for the Uri storm.
Right.
And the billing issue, we're asking that they open a new docket.
Got it. Okay, so the second question is this. You said you talked to the CEO this morning, right?
Yes,
So did you tell him you were going to refer this to the PSC?
I did not.
Okay. I was going to ask you what his reaction is, but I guess
I didn't think it was his. What I told him, I was very careful because this wasn't public yet.
Right.
I told him that he wasn't going to learn a lot. Maybe he's learning a little. Most of this stuff he knows has been an issue. I can't tell you whether Chuck or any of our people told him, but no, I mean, it was just, I mean, he knew that he had to know I was going to announce something. I did tell him I was going to try to get some facts to the PSC, but he has not seen any of this stuff.
Okay, so just to follow up on that, so you've talked to him several times now, right?
Probably 4 or 5.
Okay, so do you think that based on the complaints, based on the information you gave him, that the company, have been forthcoming in responding to what you've asked them to do? And what have you asked them to do to this point? Have you asked them to do anything?
Yeah, well, I've asked him to do a lot. First of all, I asked him to get on a plane and get down here and be here more and have more of a presence responding directly to customers.
Did they?
Not as much as I would like. I mean, I've seen some Zooms and things like that. I mean, look, from a communication standpoint, I probably would have set up an in-person customer service center in Little Rock. And even if it was one that wasn't going to be here forever, and I would have done regular press briefings. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that could have been done differently on that front. In many cases, in several cases, at least 2 cases, I think the calls were about informing them that of the problems that we uncovered. And as I told you, the one time was at a hearing in the legislature, and they checked that out that day. On one occasion, he visited in person with me, and the CEO came and met with me. Chuck, were you?
Yeah, we were there.
Yeah, you were in that meeting.
So when was, I'm sorry.
That was probably a month ago.
Okay.
Is that about right? Yeah, a month ago. And look, I just told him, I said, look, whatever you're doing, it's not, from a communication standpoint, people aren't hearing you, or they're not feeling the relief that you're talking about.
Right.
And so, look, I told him today, it's my job to be the public's voice, to be the advocate for consumers. And so, a lot of the stuff I have to say is not pretty. I'm not in it to make friends. I'm in it to communicate the frustration and anger that I reply to on the internet all the time, and that is reflected by the 2,800 calls. So, you know, I know my staff has talked to Summit staff a lot as well. But what I've tried to do more than anything is emphasize how big a deal this is. Because sometimes when your company's based elsewhere and you live elsewhere, you may not fully understand how angry, frustrated, just worn out by the whole thing that people are. And again, we've got a couple other gas companies that I mentioned. One we've had 0 complaints about, and one we've had, what, 5, 7, handful, 7. So, I mean, lots of questions are raised, and it's the PSC's job under the law to get to the bottom of some of these, because that's what the law provides.
Along those lines,
Go ahead.
you've got those thousands of complaints, and a lot of these billing issues you brought up, preventable and things that you're having to raise up to some of the utilities. Y'all got to be a little worn out, and are your eyes on them a little bit closer with so many issues that just aren't popping up other places?
I haven't gotten any more or less. I mean, I've been focused on this since the day that we got it. Now, do I have a lot of stuff going on? Yeah, but I can walk and chew gum at the same time. We've got awesome staff, and I communicate with Chuck Harder, who's my deputy for this area. I communicate with him way more than he would like, almost all day, every day. And when there's developments on this stuff, I'm on top of it. If you'll go on to these neighborhood apps, you'll see yesterday I was jogging, trying to take care of myself. And I saw, as I was listening to, I don't know, Led Zeppelin or something, I saw that there was a neighborhood comment about one of my comments. So I'm literally jogging, responding to it. So yeah, I'm tired of dealing with it, but it's my job, and I'm leaning into it because it's what we need to do. The frustration and the fatigue that Arkansans are feeling, we all feel. We would love for it to just disappear, but make no mistake about it. We're going to be here until it's over. And if we need to make another motion, we'll make another motion. But this is what we do. So what I've tried to do is, I have a heat pump. Let's talk about this for a second. Years ago, many people found it cheaper to have a furnace instead of a heat pump. Well, now some people find it cheaper to have a heat pump than a furnace. Well, I got a heat pump. So I personally pay about a fifth or a sixth of my neighbor's gas bill. And I told her, hey, neighbor, she showed me her bills. I said, good grief. She goes, I said, I got a heat pump, I'm paying like. So what I'm trying to do, even though we're pretty much for my neighborhood and some of my friends and all, most of them have gotten it worked out, but I'm staying in touch with what other people do on these apps and through the complaints. I'm staying in touch with what a lot of people are still feeling. Just because your bill's fine or the next person bill's fine doesn't mean the other 100,000 are fine. So I'm trying to stay focused. And my point of staying in touch with Summit is to let them know it's not done yet. We've made some progress on some fronts. We've identified some issues, but it's not done yet. And I certainly hope March is better than February. And so far, it looks like it will be.
So when you communicate that to them, that it's not done yet, I'm assuming you've told them that?
Yeah, we're looking at I don't know if I have to tell them that I'm going to keep doing my job, but I have not told anybody that this is over, because it's not over.
So what is their, how do they react to that? Do
Well,
say
look,
we're
they,
trying, but we're failing. What did they say?
well, they've hired more customer service people, and they
Customer
expect,
service isn't the big
Yeah,
issue that
I
you
know.
pointed out,
yeah,
right?
well, there are different issues. There's a price of gas.
Right.
The price of gas is going down.
Has nothing to do with customer service.
That's right. But I will say poor customer service doesn't help it
Right.
in terms of the anger. But let me say a couple things. So the price of gas is going down. That's a good thing. But that does not change whether the price that everybody was charged is the result of good decision making or bad decision making, particularly as we reference Black Hills in Arkansas, Oklahoma gas, et cetera, right? That needs to be fully fleshed out by the regulatory body in charge of that. In this case, under Arkansas law, the Public Service Commission.
Right. So let me ask you a question about that. So they are obligated to file new gas rates. They do it every 6 months, right? They do it in November. They'll do it at the end of this month. So 2 points to that. One is, do you think it's important that the PSC open its investigation before they file again? And then 2,
Yes.
what role will you guys have in looking at what that new gas rate is going to be?
Well, we will not stop interacting as the representative of the ratepayer. We will be continuously interacting with the PSC and engage with them. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you, but
you can apply. So you can petition though to be a party to that docket, right? Or you cannot. So do you expect that?
we're in that docket. We're already in that docket.
Okay.
This is the URI docket.
So that's ongoing.
This is the URI docket that dates back to February 2021.
I'm talking about their gas filing. That's not part of in it. That's a separate.
That's in the same document.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the investigation would be in that docket.
Okay, got
Everything
it.
related to their gas costs go in that document.
Okay.
Real quick, have you reached out to CenterPoint, even though they sold Arkansas and Oklahoma gas distribution? Have you reached out to the CEO of CenterPoint to get their opinion on this?
No, most of these issues that we're dealing with here, particularly the billing issues, involve the Summit leadership. I mean, they bought it. I don't know how much. I mean, you're talking about asking experts their opinions. There may be a time for that, but not at this point.
And the reason why I ask that is because when a Summit customer logs into their site, the very first bill that they would have in the system is from November, which is, when Summit bought over. So you can't compare bill to bill from anything that when it was originally CenterPoint. So say February 2021, what's your rate here and all of that. You're just stuck from November 2022 and then maybe a graph showing us what was used then. So if Summit had bought everything, then
they did, but they have the records on year usage. I mean, that should be available, even though it's under a different name. That's all available. They still know what the person used a year ago. Those records transfer. I got to catch I got to get out and catch a flight. Anything else? Okay. Hey, thank y'all, and make sure everybody got a copy of the motion. Okay. Thank y'all.